What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the quartering with a bit of a more serious topic. You know, we often roast on this channel the internet firewall that, for example, China uses that essentially scrubs all content so that its citizens can only consume government-approved content. There is some level of oversight in most countries on what goes on TV or what goes on the internet. Free speech doesn't really exist in a pure form, at least online. We've seen this with deplatforming and how the tech oligarchy of Twitter and Facebook and Amazon can all work together to remove competition. We know that it's a frightening world indeed. But I want to talk about a new internet firewall that's going up in America's hat, or I guess America is Canada's pants. And don't click off if you're like, oh, it's from Canada, because this is really important. It's really important because this is the type of thing that very progressive leaders here in the United States certainly would love to do. Now, in Canada, much of the content that is on their television, from what I understand, believe me, sorry Canadians, please take it easy on me. I'm trying to help you. I may not get everything correct, but there's an agency called the CRTC, which kind of oversees Canadian programming to run it past a level of many checks to see how, quote, Canadian it is. If that alone doesn't give you shivers down your spine, they have a weird point system which can be gamed and bent in order to actually be Canadian enough. You can see live action and continuous action animated series needs to have a Canadian director, screenwriter, first and second lead performer, production designer, director of photography, music composer, picture editor. These are all, there's a point system, and you need a certain number of points to be, considered Canadian enough. You can see a series. At least 60% of the series episodes attain 6 points or more. So you could backload a series, front load a series, and then do whatever you want. A documentary, I watched a video where, the YouTuber was giving a lot of different examples, and none of it really made sense to me on why this system exists. But it's very frightening. Having never really seen anything like this before here in the United States, while systems like this exist for our award shows and probably for government handouts, for Hollywood productions, that's why so many production companies film in Georgia, there's all sorts of stuff like this kind of leaking in here in America. But in Canada, it's real. And they have a new, basically, internet firewall here that is going to affect the way YouTube, Spotify, and other platforms, how you, the user, consumes this type of content. It may affect how you see what's on your YouTube homepage, what's in your subscription feed, when you go to explore, what's allowed to be seen there. It may promote particularly Canadian programs or a wide variety of things like that. You can see this article. Your free speech is at risk with Ottawa's push to regulate online content. Liberal government says controversial changes to broadcast bill will only apply to, quote, professional content. But as we've always seen with any kind of government intervention, what are they going to describe as professional? Are you calling my content professional? I mean, I have studio lights. I have a professional grade microphone. I have over 1 million subscribers. Am I a professional content creator? I upload several times a day. This says the federal government is facing an uproar over controversial changes to a bill that will bring videos and other content posted to social media like YouTube under the purview of the country's broadcasting regulator. What this is government regulating speech through their production arm, or this regulatory arm. The changes to Bill C-10, made at the behest of the Liberal MPs on the Heritage Committee, would allow Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications, the CRTC, to regulate user-generated content uploaded to social media platforms, much as it regulates radio and TV content now. The government says the change will apply only to, quote, professional content, and are necessary to make wildly successful online streaming services and apps contribute to Canadian culture. But critics They argue they amount to an unjust infringement on the Charter of Rights guarantee of free speech. The Canadian Heritage Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, introduced the bill C-10 in November. They stated the intent was to modernize the Broadcasting Act for an era in which Canadians increasingly consume music, movies, TV shows, videos, podcasts, and other online through mobile apps. The government also says the objective is to ensure that digital streaming services enjoying booming revenues from online traffic contribute to the creation, production, and promotion of Canadian content. This sounds like if you would just say Chinese instead of Canadian, I wouldn't be surprised. Unlike the online platforms, Canadian distributors of broadcast content such as Rogers, Shaw and Bell are required to pay a portion of the revenue into the Canadian Media Fund. Now we're getting to what this may be about, an agency that funds Canadian programming. The CRTC regulated broadcasters are also required to broadcast a minimum amount of Canadian content and on radio and TV. What do you mean? Why wouldn't people be worried about this? Critics say of the amendment that it could give the CRTC the power to regulate the posts that millions of Canadians upload every day to platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Michael Geist, a University of Ottawa professor and Canada Research Chair in Internet Law, said that those posts could be treated as, quote, programs which would allow the regulator to set terms and conditions associated with that content. Quote, the kind of speech that many Canadians engage in on these platforms is just basic fundamental freedom of expression and does not require and should not be subject to any sort of regulation or regulatory oversight by a broadcast regulator. Google, which owns YouTube, has also raised concerns. This potentially extends CRTC regulation to all audio and visual content on the internet. The company said in a media statement, "We remain concerned about the unintended consequences, particularly with regard to the potential effects of Canadians' expressive rights." Guilbeault's press secretary said Bill C-10 is meant to target services that curate and commission music and video content and professional series, films, and music, not posts made by individual Canadians. Yeah, well, that's how it starts, right? And what about the content that, for example, the Joe Rogan podcast, these type of things? What is it, what effect is it going to have on Canadians' abilities to consume content produced in the United States or anywhere else? Me as a YouTuber, I have a large Canadian audience. This is why I'm trying to cover this and amplify that, Bill C-10 needs to not happen. But unfortunately, it looks like as of today, they don't care. Where's the newest one? This April 30th, Heritage Committee will not reverse change to Bill C-10 despite public outcry. Liberal and opposition members of Parliament split along party lines Friday while discussing the public outcry sparked by the adoption of the new amendment to Bill C-10. The bill, sponsored by Heritage Minister Stephen Don't Care, is intended to update the Broadcasting Act to better reflect how people and companies use the internet, including social media platforms. So what they're saying is, we already control what's on the TV, but people aren't watching TV as much anymore. Thus, we're losing control. Now, I understand that it's convenient to immediately ascribe malice here. And I think that that's completely fine when talking about any type of government agency infringing on the content that its people consume. This is mind-boggling. The government says legislation is designed to regulate platforms like YouTube and Facebook in the same way as conventional broadcasters. And those platforms distribute video content or music to Canadians. Why do you think that YouTube, Spotify, podcasts, and why do we think that these platforms are one of the big reasons they're famous or popular? It's because the content that is available here is not what people are getting on TV. People, let's say, want to consume news from independent news sources. Let's say a show like Steven Crowder or Ben Shapiro. Certainly you could argue that these are quote-unquote professional broadcasting services. Is Canada going to then want to regulate those? What about Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan is certainly a professional broadcast. Is Canada going to regulate that? What about my content for my Canadian viewers? Is it going to bury it? Is it going to hide it in the subscription fees? Just like with COPPA and a wide variety of other governmental meddling with this platform, it's always been a net negative. There hasn't been a single time in my memory that government regulating speech was a good thing. I can't think of a single time government getting involved in YouTube and Facebook and Twitter was ever a good thing. And it's for these reasons that I stand in solidarity against Bill C-10 with my Canadian viewers, the Canadian people, and I sincerely hope they continue to push back. There seems to be a good number of articles, intent of Bill C-10 is censorship. How is giving government the power to regulate videos Canadians post on social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, a justified restriction of their rights of free expression under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms? How is it, in the words of Section 1 of the Charter, quote, a reasonable limit prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society? If Trudeau insists regulating videos on social media posted by Canadians is not the intent of this legislation, why have they suddenly dropped Section 4.1, specifically exempts such activities from its provisions? What it used to read was, this act does not apply in respect of programs that are uploaded to online undertaking that provides a social media service by a user of the service. Why did they remove that? This is frightening. To my Canadian viewers, I stand with you. I can foster maybe 1 to 2 of you, but you're going to have to bring some Freedom 35 with you, and some maple syrup, and what are some other Canadian stereotypes? I don't know, some good fishing tips. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stop Bill C-10.